Hi everybody, Andrew Cuneo here. Today I'm going to be taking Jeff Lynn's Tainted Pact list, which he's playing in the Arena Championships, through a historic metagame challenge to see how it does. I played a lot of Tainted Pact and evolved it over the release of a lot of sets, but I have to say this is pretty different from how I've normally built my Tainted Pact decks. So kind of the big picture differences: I've always played blue-black, maybe with a very slight splash. This deck is kind of blue, but it also has double white cards in it, and it has cheap black cards that you're going to hope to play on the early turns. So this is much more of a true three-color deck. One other massive difference is this list has 3 copies of Tainted Pact to go with 2 Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. Now, I've never done this because it means that if you draw a hand of Tainted Pact Jace, you can still win on turn 4, but you're going to have to cast Tainted Pact twice. It costs 2 more mana to win by turn 4 because you have to Tainted Pact into another copy of Tainted Pact, take that, and then cast it. So it's slightly more mana inefficient to win, but you get more games where you can win, where you can just cast your first copy of Tainted Pact more freely, I would say, with this list, probably. I've never played with this configuration, so there's probably going to be some nuances to it that are going to throw me a little bit. I really don't know whether I think that this is going to be better or worse. I mean, pretty obviously Jeff prepared for a big tournament and decided to play like this, so he thinks it's better. So we're going to give that a try. Beyond that, there's a lot of different card choices than I've made when I've constructed my lists. But probably the biggest difference is there's a bunch more high-end cards, like Discover the Formula, Sublime Epiphany. These are, I mean, they're really good cards. They're just really expensive. I think that what might be going on here is that Jeff predicted the Arena metagame, Arena Championship metagame, was going to have a lot of red-black, Jund, kind of like mid-range decks. And having a bunch of these like high-impact, more expensive cards is pretty good because those games can get pretty grindy. I didn't prepare for, you know, the high-stakes tournament like that, so I don't really know what I would have expected the metagame to be. I've found that the Tainted Pact lists have struggled the most with cheap decks, like cheap aggressive decks with soft counters, you know, like white-blue artifacts with Metallic Rebuke, blue-red wizards that's going to board in like Spell Pierces and Mystical Disputes, stuff like that. And I think that this style of configuration is going to be kind of weak to that, but maybe that wasn't the right, maybe this is the right approach for the Arena Championships, where it really is just a lot of red-black. There's a little bit of white-blue artifacts, and maybe just hoping to dodge that or, you know, get a good draw against them. Beyond that, some of the cards that stand out to me as cards that I mean, it's certainly nice to be playing Wrath of God and Supreme Verdict over Languish, which I've played a lot of, or Shadow's Verdict, the 5-mana one. Divine Purge is a card I've always thought just kind of stunk. But if there was ever a place for it, it's in a controlling deck that's going to have a combo that's going to win quickly. So, yeah, I mean, this is probably about the best setup you're going to have for Divine Purge, so it's probably good in spots here. I'm a little bit dubious that Bind to Secrecy is better than actually just playing with Negate, just because Negate's easier to cast. If you look at the lands, the mana base has a bunch of different lands of what I've been playing, I think, to try to support the more color-intensive requirements of this list. So there are fewer basics in this deck, and there are more lands that are always going to come into play tapped. So there's Temple of Enlightenment and Temple of Deceit. I think I've even moved away from playing an irrigated farmland in my 3-color builds. But there's basically the same number of colored sources as what I've been playing. There might actually be more of whatever you... There's an equal number of black and white sources here. I think it's 15 or 16. And if you look at the 3 color lists I've played, I've generally, like, whatever my 3rd color I'm playing has been, I've had fewer than that. So in order to get to the point of having that, I'm pretty sure it's 15, in the secondary and the 3rd color, that's where you have to play, like, Temple of Enlightenment, Temple of Deceit, things like that. There's a Glacial Fortress and Drowned Catacomb, which require lands that have specific land types to come into play untapped. There's actually a similar number of lands that are going to trigger those as to what I've usually played in my lists because of, like, the irrigated farmland. I guess actually there's slightly fewer. There's no way it's literally the same. There's no Castle Vantress in this list, which I've always thought Castle Vantress is kind of a bad card, but it is good against those red-black decks that just try to make you discard your whole hand, and then you're just playing off the top of your deck. Castle Vantress can be good in those games. Yeah. Looking at the sideboard, there are some more unusual choices. One thing I find pretty weird is there's this card, Break Expectations, and there's no Duress. I find that kind of weird. Like, this is a card people have always loved trying because they always sort of think that the card you're giving them, your opponent, is bad, and it's true that the card is bad, but a lot of these cards aren't useless. Like, if you wind up giving your opponent the Brutality of the Ginger Brute, they could kill you with it. Or, I mean, some of the cards are going to be useless, so there are going to be times when you wind up giving your opponent a card that just literally doesn't do anything, but they do get to pick, so it's not that hard for them to pick a card that's actually going to have an effect on the game. There's a Thieving Skydiver in the sideboard, which that looks good to me. I've been struggling with my Tainted Pact lists against the kind of the blue artifact decks that play Esper Sentinel. This seems like a really good inclusion. The other thing that's kind of a little bit odd is there's just a lot of removal at the 2-mana slot. Like, there's no Impulse, which I think Impulse is quite good. I definitely would have played that. There's no Seek New Knowledge. There is a Painful Bond. There's no Wishclaw Talisman. In some ways, you might say, like, the 3rd copy of Tainted Pact is kind of replacing a Wishclaw Talisman, and maybe that is an upgrade. We'll have to see. No Mazemind Tome, which I've always really liked Mazemind Tome, and I think it's a better card than Reckoner Bankbuster for this deck. Because there are a lot of matchups where the gaining the 4 life is actually good, and the fact that you can scry with the Mazemind Tome without spending extra mana matters a lot. Maybe Jeff's idea is to board this in against other, like, slower decks where you're going to want actually the body to be able to hit their Planeswalkers some of the time. I can see where maybe against red-black this is slightly better than Mazemind Tome. I think as an overall card, Mazemind Tome is better, but this is a sideboard card, so it's obviously only for specific matchups. I kind of hate playing Undercity Plunder over Duress again, because I just don't... I don't think getting a random card from your opponent is going to help you very often with what your strategy is. Maybe this is, like, only against other blue decks and where, you know, their blue spells are probably going to help you. More 2-mana removal. I think not playing Innocent Blood is kind of a mistake. I would have definitely played Innocent Blood over some of these 2-mana removal spells. Like, there are some creatures in this list, but I don't think there are enough that it makes it worth not playing Innocent Blood. The other thing, this list does not have a Sheoldred, and I think that's a concession to the mana, maybe. I found Sheoldred to be really good, and there are an equal number of black sources to white sources, and if you're playing double white cards, I would have played a Sheoldred at a minimum in the sideboard. I kind of think this card, Obscura Interceptor, is not going to be very good, so I would have just cut that for Sheoldred. But anyway, enough of my thoughts. Let's see the deck in action. I've yet to play any games with it, so take my opinions with a grain of salt. Well, I hope this is a matchup Divine Purge is good in. I guess I'm supposed to keep this hand. I do have 2 lands that I can scry off of. And some removal spells, so I'm not going to die that quickly. Also, this deck does have a bunch of 6 mana cards in it, so you're certainly going to want to be making your land drops. So I want to put this on blue, and then I'm going to play Concealed Courtyard next turn, probably. I think I want a card that's going to get me an advantage rather than just disrupt them. It's like card drawing, Planeswalker, something like that. So this exiles, and this is dies. Alright, I guess I'll do this. A little bit confused about, I guess this is a 4-color toxic deck. Are there actually any cards that you can play in? Historic that give poison counters that aren't from Phyrexia 1? Yeah, I think I'm going to cling to dust my own Bloodchief's Thirst probably here. I also don't think my life total's that likely to matter against somebody who's got a bunch of toxic creatures in their deck. Okay, this is an alchemy-only toxic card. It's actually a pretty good card. Definitely would like to be able to kill it here. That's not the one. So I think if this hits me, they're going to get a random 2-mana card into their hand. Oh, actually, it's going to be a 3-mana card because the Jawbone Duelist will hit me first. Oh, sorry, no, this is the wrong one. This is going to give something in my hand. It's going to poison one of the cards in my hand. I was thinking of the black one. Oh, but they're actually just going after my Planeswalker. Okay. I accept. Let's see if I hit a Tainted Pact here, I milled the Tainted Pact. Oh, okay. Because I milled this Tainted Pact, I win without having to cast Tainted Pact a second time. I'm going to have to cast the Consider, and if they can respond with a 1-mana card, I'm going to die here, but I don't really think they're very likely to have a 1-mana card that does anything. If they had a 1-mana card that killed my Jace, they certainly would have killed it and not attacked it. And I don't know if there's... I guess they could have like... There's 1-mana cards that just counter instants that they could have, but you wouldn't really have those in your main deck. Like, I think Swan Song might be legal in this format. Oh, I just milled the Go Blank. That's another card that I found to be a really weird inclusion. Especially in the main deck, because I think if you're registering this deck, you're kind of doing it in a way where you're expecting in game one a lot of your opponent's cards are going to be kind of useless against you. And Go Blank is not really a very good card in that situation. Guess I can just take this Inquisition in now. I don't even lose to Swan Song. I forgot Inquisition was my bottom card. And not surprisingly, their cards don't do anything. Alright, so this is like low to the ground creature deck. It's a weird mishmash of creatures, but that's what it is. So definitely want Temporary Lockdown. Probably want March of Otherworldly Light. Go for the Throat. Tempted by the Auric would... It's probably really not at its best. I think they're going to have mostly 1 and 2 mana cards that... Me taking them is not really going to be any better than me just killing them. So what don't I like? I don't like Go Blank. Did I even see anything I could hit with Bind to Secrecy? Necrogen Communion, yeah. I'll be fine with not being able to counter that one. I'm going to board out the Obscura Interceptor as well, just because well, A, don't think it's a very good card, but also B, think it's especially a bad card when my opponent's deck is mostly 1 and 2 mana cards, it seems. I'm curious as to whether this is actually a good card in this deck. I think it's next week, maybe. Snapcaster Mage is coming to Arena, and Snapcaster Mage is certainly going to be better than Arcane Proxy in this deck. I do like that there's a Takenuma in this deck. The way this mana base was approached, there are very few lands that only tap for 1 color of mana. There's, I think, an Island, a Plains, a Takenuma, and an Otawara. And of those, I think Takenuma, well, you want to have like a few basics, just in case somebody's playing Ghost Quarter or Builder Ruin, stuff like that. But I found Takenuma to be really strong. So this is your big payoff for jumping into Historic. Doesn't really make any sense, but I can only play against the opponents that Arena gives me. Man, they were attached to that Tetsuo. Tetsuko? Is it Tetsuo Umizawa or Tetsuko? We'll never know. So I have a choice between playing a tap land or taking 2 damage with my Thoughtseize. Probably I'm not going to have a choice anymore. They might just take my Thoughtseize here. They might take Arcane Proxy, actually. They took my Thoughtseize. Okay. I guess I'm going to play my Consider this turn. There aren't that many 2 mana plays that are like 2 mana plays that I would find that I'm going to really want to have for next turn, but I might want to try to find a Fatal Push. Alright, so this is going to be like a Jund deck playing Jarsel and Crucius. Abundant Harvest is a pretty terrible Magic card, but it's a good target for Jarsel. So I'm going to fragment this, and then they'll probably get a Tarmogoyf, which I'm going to fragment off of with the Arcane Proxy. And from that point, I think they're going to get nothing. Is that really what I want to do? I could Heartless Act. I think I'm just going to fragment with Arcane Proxy. Usually they're not going to have any 1 mana creatures. At least that's what I'm expecting. I guess it's possible I could have hit a Kroxa off of the first fragment. Might have been a little bit annoying. I think they're going to take Painful Bond. they have Jarsel, it's going to be rough for me. Maybe honestly I screwed up by not. Maybe I should just Arcane Proxy Thoughtseize them. Don't think I care enough about the token to use my Otawara on it. And getting to the 6th land so I can actually play this Torrential Gearhulk is more important, I would say. I'm just going to trade the proxy for the goblin. That ain't great. All right, now I am going to have to Heartless Act the Reflection of Kiki Jiki. Is there any point to waiting? And they could have Jarsel or Crucius, but I think I still have to kill the Reflection of Kiki Jiki. Maybe I could wait and not even do it on my turn and just see if I draw Supreme Verdict or Wrath of God. Yeah, maybe I was supposed to counter that. Alright, I'll counter Bind to Secrecy instead. Or I'll Bind to Secrecy, Fable the Mirror Breaker instead. Maybe I was supposed to play the 2nd mode on that. Conjure a duplicate of target creature card in an opponent's graveyard. Do they not have any creature cards? Is that why I couldn't do it? Oh, that's why I couldn't do it. I do think Diviner of Fates is probably a really good card in this matchup. Also just because of that interaction where, like, that makes their Inquisition do nothing. Should I trade here? I'd be going to 9. I don't think I have that many more ways to trigger the Diviner of Fates in my deck. And if they're spending their mana getting the tokens from the Seasoned Pyromancer, they're not hitting me with the Hive of the Eye Tyrant for a turn. Could really go for drawing Discover the Formula. Or honestly, just a Jace, Teferi, any of that stuff would be great. Okay. Is there anything I could discover that I would play on my turn? I don't think so. So I'm gonna let them animate the Hive of the Eye Tyrant if that's how they want to spend their turn. I don't even think there's anything in my graveyard I particularly care about, so I'm gonna let them attack. But now I'm going to spring into action, because maybe I find a card that kills the Hive of the Eye Tyrant. I think it would be, I think I want to leave a blue-black land untapped. This is what I was talking about when I was going over the deck list, that just having a lot of cards in the deck that are good top decks against these red-black decks is pretty important. It's a Tarmogoyf, okay. And also, I don't need to hold this Tainted Pact. Because remember, I've got 3 of them in my deck, so I can stop if I see a card I like, a Tainted Pact or a Jace here. Is this a card I like? No. I mean, I was just thinking maybe I like it because it's a lifelinker. Alright, I'm going to take the Jace. So I think I should start with Opt. If I opt and I find Tainted Pact, I just win. Is the same thing true if I play the Narset first? No. I run out of mana if I do that. Luck. Rewarded for luck. And also rewarded for actually thinking. Certainly in this matchup, having the Arcane Proxy and the Torrential Gearhulk and the Discover the Formula, that seems really good. Alright, so what are cards that I would actually like in this matchup? I think the Scarab God's going to be good. Go for the Throat's pretty good. Because I want to kill the Cruciuses and the Jarsals. It's pretty important. And I think the Bank Buster's good. This one's a maybe. I don't really think I want negate type cards. Negate does not play very well when your opponent just has, you know, 4 Thoughtseizes and a bunch of Inquisitions in their deck. Undercity Plunder might not be the worst. I also don't think it's going to be particularly good. So what do I not love here? Certainly not Divine Purge. Certainly not Portable Hole. Fragment Reality was okay that game, but I actually think it's kind of not that good. I think I actually am going to leave Go Blank in my deck. Is this thing good? Return up to 1 target spell to its owner's hand. Flash Lifelink. Connive. Doesn't sound good to me, but I don't know. It's in this deck. We'll give it a shot. I'm at least getting to play Obscura Interceptor against a deck that has a lot of 3-mana cards in it. I think I just realized this deck doesn't have a Mystical Dispute in the main deck or the sideboard. I can understand not having it in the main deck. Not having it in the sideboard, that doesn't sound right to me. I think I also don't have a Sheoldred's Edict, which it seems like Sheoldred's Edict's pretty heavily played. Not really sure why, but if everyone else is doing it, maybe I should be doing it too. If I'm lucky here, I'm going to bind to Secrecy a... what's it called? Fable of the Mirror Breaker. It's a Crucius. Can't bind to Secrecy that one. Does it make sense to just bind to Secrecy the Seasoned Pyromancer? Cast it. Or is that just kind of a pointless fancy play? Or I could Tainted Pact. I don't know that there's any... I mean, there's certainly no 3-mana card I'd be happy to find with Tainted Pact. I think I am just going to go for the Seasoned Pyromancer plan. Okay. Don't mind that at all. They also didn't have a land, which does mean they have 4 spells, but probably going to be a while before they can play 2 spells. I'm just going to take the hit from that, and I think I'll Bloodchief's Thirst the Crucius, or I'll Bloodchief's Thirst the Tarmogoyf. Maybe I should have blocked with all 4, and then I could have Bloodchief's Thirsted the Crucius. They have another Crucius in their hand, though. That's a good card. Can kill it with this Teferi. Needed to find some spells, though, off of the Painful Bond. Like, I could have done a lot better than Teferi minus to kill the Minsk and Boo if I'd found better spells, obviously. What if I draw Sublime Epiphany off the top of my deck here? That'd be pretty nice. If you haven't played much Alchemy or Historic, this is like a green-red version of Expressive Iteration. It's kind of cool. It's not as good as Expressive Iteration because it's way worse to play on turn 3. But it's not a bad card. You're not what I was hoping for. How many Crucius triggers? I think they got to use Crucius 3 times. Which was pretty unfortunate for me. I'm going to triple block here. I'm assuming they don't have much in the way of instant speed removal in their deck post sideboarding. So I'm expecting it to work. We'll see though. I do have this Cling to Dust, which I can conceivably Cling to Dust the Seasoned Pyromancer, but I think I might need to use it just to find more spells to be able to cast. We'll see. It'd be really nice to play a format where Fable the Mirror Breaker wasn't played every single game. It's a little miserable. How frequently it shows up. So I can get whatever I want here. I think what I want is like a Supreme Verdict or Wrath of God. I can't afford to take the 6 mana cards, which is sad. Sublime Epiphany would have been quite a nice draw. I don't remember all my Jaces got exiled this game. So I do need to leave myself a way to win, which is probably going to be like, hopefully it's Torrential Gearhulk is how I'm going to win this game. I guess one other thing that this deck, because of the way the colored lands were done in this deck, there's no Hall of Storm Giants in the deck either. And I found Hall of Storm Giants to be a really good secondary way to win. Well, they pitched a Jarsoul, meaning I guess they have an additional Jarsoul. So am I getting Thought Seized here? And an additional Crucius. Oh, and they have Abundant Harvest. That's unfortunate. This thing target. So I think I want to leave targets for Arcane Proxy and Torrential Gearhulk in my yard. Definitely not going to run out of lands to play this game. It's a lot of harvesting. This particular thing is why I find Abundant Harvest to be a pretty terrible card. It doesn't actually help you find, you know, the particular spell you need. It's nice when you need lands because you can just say land and you get what you want. But when you say spell, you actually hit just another Abundant Harvest a decent amount of the time, which is just that's really not very acceptable. Come on, Wrath of God. Or Arcane Proxy, or Diviner of Fates into Wrath of God. Okay. Doesn't really change anything. I needed the 7 mana mode on Arcane Proxy, right? I could kill this, like, chump something. I actually would die to them just tasting a Tarmogoyf at me with Reflection of Kiki Jiki. Did I see any reasons to do anything different? Maybe I do want Tempted by the Auric over the Interceptor. Is it possible I would cast a turn 1 Cling to Dust? I don't think so. I guess it doesn't really cost me anything to just play this as a black pathway, because I'm going to do it on turn 2 to have access to Heartless Act anyway. Assuming this doesn't get Thoughtseized, but if this gets Thoughtseized, I'm going to Cling to Dust the Thoughtseize. I'll even Cling to Dust that. In the hopes of finding Bind to Secrets. So now they're going to Thoughtseize my Diviner of Fates and make me sad. I'll be cycling Raffine's Tower here unless they play something into the Heartless Act. This card works really well with Crucius and Fable of the Mirror Breaker because you can just, you know, discard the cards that would be going away to them, which is a little bit different from, it's different from how Expressive Iteration works, obviously, because you can't discard the cards you see with Expressive Iteration. I have no spells. Come on, Archmage's Charm. Nope. I want to just use this Otawara this turn to buy time. I don't think so. Maybe I could have maybe left Censor on top of my deck and just cycled and then cycled the Censor to make the Cling to Dust a little better. Whoa, they're Thoughtseizing me again? How'd I get that lucky? Presumably they're about to go land 3-drop. If not, their hand is extremely weird. No, there we go, land 3-drop. I don't think I have any 1-mana instant speed removal spells that kill it because I took the Fragment Reality out of my deck. This is kind of sad. They definitely should have attacked before doing this. I was going to do it anyway, but I might have done it at the end of their turn. Probably would have done it at the end of their turn. Or waited to see if they played an even better target for it. Should I just go ahead and take that, or should I wait for the Crucius? I can make it so there's just sorcery and instant in the yard. Guess I'm just going to wait for the Crucius. Definitely want to get to double white in play. I guess I blew it. I was thinking that I might, you know, draw into a card I would actually want to play, as opposed to a card I couldn't afford to cast. I think they need to take Tempted by the Auric. Maybe not. Makes sense to minus on the Jarsoul to deny them casting Perilous Iteration next turn. I don't think so. I think I need to try to find some action. That's not the action I was looking for. Come on, Supreme Verdict and or Wrath of God. Or, yeah, Wrath of God, that'll do. Still don't have enough cards in the yard to flash black Cling to Dust, though. That's a pretty good one. Oh no. It's only Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Only Fable of the Mirror Breaker, people. And I drew another land. Not ideal. On Supreme Verdict. Go for the throat. So I'm going to take 5 here, going to 5. And they'll have the Seasoned Pyromancer, which they can get out of the yard, potentially. So I'm definitely in trouble. Not the worst. I would accept Supreme Verdict. I would accept Sublime Epiphany. I don't think so. Arcane Proxy, get power word, kill that. Block, go to 2. I think this is about as good as I'm going to do. Supreme Verdict is maybe slightly better. Can't afford to just play the Tainted Pact again. I need to kill a Reflection of Kiki Jiki. I'm certainly going to be losing if they start reflectioning the Seasoned Pyromancer. Alright, I'm dead. I'll kill that elemental token instead then. So what were the conclusions from this? I mean, that deck I lost to. That's another list probably from the Arena Championships. That was a good list. Things that, like, I did like having access to the expensive cards in that matchup. I thought they were pretty good. I didn't really care that my opponent Slaughter games my Jace Wielder of Mysteries in both as the sideboarded games. Honestly, that could have been any other card and they would have won more easily. But that was mostly because I didn't have hands that were trying to combo anyway. I think that if there's one thing, well, there's two things I would say about this list. One is that I think that it could use, like, I think too many of the card drawing cards are too expensive. I think that this list probably wants to play Impulse and Seek New Knowledge. Seek New Knowledge obviously would have been great in those two games where I just drew a million lands. The other thing I was going to say is I think not having a Castle Vantress and not having a Hall of Storm Giants is a pretty big cost in those matchups. Like, I liked having these expensive cards, but it was obviously really bad that I felt like I was kind of minus 2 lands that could have a big impact on the game. There are some lands in here that are a little bit more impactful, like having additional Scry and Cycle lands that's nice, I guess. But I don't think it's as big of a deal as having Castle Vantress and Hall of Storm Giants. I don't really... I think something would have to give it to actually play more lands that only tap for blue mana. Like, I think you couldn't play as many double white cards, or you couldn't play as many black cards. It's a little bit rough. The other thing, I really think the go blank should be something different. Like, that could be one of the like Impulse or Seek New Knowledge. I think that would be a pretty big upgrade for the deck. There also might just be a little bit too many 1-for-1 removal spells in the deck. Is there a Soul Guide Lantern? Maybe I should have boarded in Soul Guide Lantern in that last matchup too. Just to control the Jarsoul. Well, anyway, that was this list. There's definitely a lot to think about. Some interesting ideas here. I think my next step with Tainted Pact is I'm going to try to build it more as a blue-red deck that's just splashing black for Tainted Pact and maybe like Thoughtseize and Inquisition. So I think there may be more appealing stuff to do in red than in black or white. So if you haven't already, please sub to the channel and you'll have that to look forward to at some point in the future. Thanks for watching.